Lately, I've been getting a lot of questions about how I hook the computer up with all the outboard gear, or how I connect the console to all the outboard gear. And a few weeks ago, I did a mixing video where I kind of went through my output setup from the computer, from Logic, and how I bring it back out on the console. But I realized I didn't really go through the Patchbay setup, and I remember in the beginning how confusing setting up the Patchbay was. It just took me a while to kind of wrap my head around it. So I wanted to take a few minutes just to go through the setup and how everything in the studio interfaces. So first off, this is the central nervous system. Everything in the studio goes through here. That way I can route signals anywhere I need to. I've also set it up in a way that allows me to work with very little patching, which can speed up some sessions. So these are all 96-point TT Patchbays, all bit tree stuff. You can see there's one here that isn't labeled yet. We just added this. We're going to be making some changes here soon. I'm not really looking forward to that, actually. So ignore this one for the moment. So right now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 active Patchbays. And it's a pretty simple flow, really. We're going to concentrate just on this side, so we'll ignore this for a minute. First off, everything, all the mic lines in the studio come to this top row. There's a 24 input panel in the live room. I have 8 inputs in the ISO booth, and then I have 2 inputs right here in the control room for when I need to, somebody do scratch vocals in here. Sometimes I'm sitting and playing percussion tracks, sitting behind the computer. So all of that shows up here on my top row. Here's the 24 mic lines from the control room. There's my 8 mic lines from the ISO booth, and here is my 2 from the control room here. The first 24 are half normal to my Trident inputs. So for instance, if I have, say there's a kick drum on channel 1, and I'm out in the live room, I plug into channel 1 on the patch panel, it comes out here, and it automatically goes down to channel 1 on the Trident. So I don't have to patch anything, which automatically comes out the output of channel 1 on the Trident, which automatically goes into the input number 1 on my Motu interface, which then automatically, once I set up if I have the output in Logic or Pro Tools, the computer's right there, that's why I keep pointing over there. If I have that set up to output 1, it automatically comes out the Motu interface and directly to my monitor input on the console. That allows me to have literally no patching. If I'm only using the console, no outboard, I plug into channels 1 through 24 in the live room. They're all going to come in and go directly to the console. Then in my channels in Pro Tools, Logic, or what we're using, as long as those outputs are set 1 through 24, they're automatically going to come out the Motu outputs and directly up on the mini faders on the console, so I can monitor everything. And it's just fast. It's no patching. Everything is there. Really simple. And that's the flow of this left side. It really just goes top to bottom. It's effortless and quick. Then after that, I have these bottom couple Patchbays have everything else. I have 2 other Motu interfaces. My main one is the 24IO. Then there's 2 2408s. And those outputs, which show up right here, are normal to my headphone system. Again, I didn't want to have to patch a lot of stuff when I'm doing sessions, unless I'm using outboard gear. If I'm using tons of outboard, then there's patch cables everywhere. But at least the basic stuff, I wanted it simple. So the headphone system has 16 channel mixers on it. And those the 2 2408s, the outputs there, which come up right here, automatically go to the inputs of the headphone system. That way, I can send mixes out to the live room or the ISO booth, or sometimes even extra mixes in here in the control room for guitar player, drummer, whoever's recording, to make their own mixes. And the way that works, that starts with inputs 25 and up, which I have 40 total ins and outs at this moment. So if I go to channel 25 in the computer and I set my, maybe I take the drum, say the kick drum comes in on channel 1, right? Well, on the auxes, I do a send to the aux, and then I set that aux to go out channel 25. That automatically comes out right here and automatically goes right here, which is the input of the headphone system, and it shows up for the mixers to use for anybody who's out there. with no patching. It's just some simple routing from the computer. That's the only thing I have to do. And again, I wanted it to be as simple as possible. Again, like I said, this is the nervous system for everything in the studio, which means I can send stuff anywhere I want it. The reason why I've left this top patch bay half normaled is sometimes I split the signal. Maybe I'm doing a mid-side thing, or maybe I want to do some parallel compression going in. Say, for instance, sometimes with room mics, I'll take one set clean and one set I'll compress like crazy. And I can simply just, say I put the rooms on 21 and 22. It's coming in here, right? I can take a patch cable. Let me grab one. Like this guy right here. I go in 21, and I can send it over to the Trident input of 23. Now, since it's half normaled, it's still sending a signal to input 21 on the console, but it's also sending one over to 23. So now I can have my way with channel 23 without ruining what's on channel 21. And I actually do that quite a bit. It's handy. It also, having the patch bay allows me to have all my outboard gear. So all my compressors show up there right here. This half of this patch bay is compressors, and then the last 8 channels of this guy are also, it's the reverb units and a couple of the other compressors that are over there. Now all of this can get patched in a couple ways. First off, I could go right out of the Trident output. So let's say we have a kick drum coming in on channel 1. It's going into the mic input of the Trident on channel 1. It's coming out the Trident. I can go out of this output, and I could patch over here. Let's say we'll go into, well, the Day King, right? Boom. I go right into the Day King, grab another patch cable. I could come out of the Day King and go into my Mode 2 input. Boom, on channel 1. Now I'm sending the signal from, it comes into the console, and with, you know, you got your gain at the top, you have all your EQ if you want to use it, then the output fader is sending the signal out the output of the console directly to my Day King compressor. Then I use the output of that compressor to go into the Mode 2 interfaces, into the computer. That's another way of doing it. That can happen sometimes mixing. Most of the time, I'm going to use the inserts when I'm tracking and I'm putting some compression on, which is all the channel inserts on the console, which is the button that's in the EQ section, are right here. So the ins and outs. That way, the compressor just gets inserted in between my input gain and the output attenuation of the fader, and it makes it easy. So I can compress everything, set my makeup gain, and then I've got the fader to do my final adjustment. And just for reference too, the way the patch bay works is the top row is always out, the bottom row is always in. So you saw me on this patch bay number 3 here, I was going out of the Trident, which is the top row of that patch bay, going into the compressor, which is, this is the bottom row of this patch bay. Then the output is on the top row of the patch bay to the input, which is the back to the bottom of that patch bay. And that's how all of this works. The inserts are that way, the outboard gear is that way, everything is that way. All right, what else? You know, I've got a few, you know, extra things. The subgroup, basically this bottom row is 2 things. It's effects returns and my inserts for my channel. So this is the channel inserts. I have all my subgroup inserts here, and then I have all my effects returns right here. I keep my master, like output and master return separate. It's always up here in the right on its own for no other reason. Really, I just couldn't fit it evenly here, but it also means I have my 2-track return, master output, and master insert all right up here in the top right. It's more of an organizational thing for me, and it just kind of made sense. When I go to mix, it's really easy for me to set up in Logic because, like I said, I have 40 ins and outs, right? So the outputs are automatically going to my monitor returns. So I don't have to set up sending out into the line inputs. Actually, I can just set out channel 1, kick drum, to go out channel 1. It's automatically going to show up on the monitor return. And then on the console, I just use the flip buttons to flip it from the monitor down to the faders, so I can mix everything with the faders, and it makes it easy. I can also take that and send it out. Sometimes I send things back to the pre's. So, you know, I could go, okay, output of Trident 1, it's the kick, and I want to send it to one of the overstayer mic pre's here on the line input there to get kind of crazy. So I can just take it into the overstayer, then I can take it out of the overstayer, back to the Trident monitor input right there. Boom, and it shows back up right on the console. And then I can use all this fun, fancy EQ and stuff. And that's the basics of this. So think of it as flow. We're going top to bottom here. Mic line, console, mic pre inputs, or if I'm coming from the ISO booth, it's coming into the overstayer or the Tonelux pre's. Goes directly to the output of the console, directly to the input of the I/O, out of the I/O input, and back to the console. It's just one nice flow. It makes setting up sessions pretty quick, unless I'm using all the compressors or outboard gear, which happens quite a bit. But even that patching is easy because all the inserts are right here, and directly above it on the next patch bay is all the outboard gear. So outboard gear and inserts are, boom, all right down in this section. So it's really easy to get stuff set up pretty quick. Anyway, that's the setup I've got going here. Hope that made a little bit of sense. Have any questions, let me know. There's a live broadcast coming up where I'm going to cover how to set this up at home. And yeah, nervous system. It all happens right here. Peace.